"Take the child," Lady Cordelia Greaves ordered, before the funeral carriage had left the chapel. 2 officers moved towards 9-year-old Lucy Dane. The girl clung to Harriet's black dress with both hands, burying her face against the heavy fabric. "You are not her mother," Cordelia said. "You are merely the second wife of a dead physician." Harriet placed herself between Lucy and the officers. "I have raised her for 6 years. She will not be dragged from her father's funeral." Rain darkened the chapel steps. Mourners who had spoken kindly to Harriet only moments earlier now kept their distance, unwilling to stand against a baronet's widow. The family solicitor opened Elias Dane's disputed will. Harriet had been named joint guardian. The second guardian was Matthew Dane, Viscount Redford, the elder brother who had not spoken to Elias in 7 years. Matthew stepped from the chapel shadows. "If the tribunal requires a recognized household," he said, looking directly at Harriet, "then we shall establish one before sunset." Lucy stopped crying. Harriet understood at once. The Viscount was proposing marriage. "Before we continue, tell us whether Harriet should accept his offer to protect the child." Lady Cordelia stared at Matthew. "You cannot be serious." "I have never found seriousness difficult." His voice was quiet, but it carried across the wet courtyard. Matthew Dane was 41, broad-shouldered and dressed in mourning black. He had stood alone throughout his brother's funeral, accepting no comfort and offering none. Harriet had met him only twice before Elias died. On both occasions, the brothers had argued. Now he faced Cordelia as though their disagreement were a matter of accounts rather than a frightened child. Mr. Ambrose Pike, the family solicitor, cleared his throat. "A marriage would not settle the guardianship question, my lord." "No," Matthew replied. "It would prevent Lady Cordelia from claiming that Mrs. Dane and I cannot fulfill the terms of my brother's will because we maintain separate households." Cordelia stepped closer to Lucy. "My niece should be removed to Greaves Hall until the tribunal meets." Lucy tightened her grip on Harriet. "No." It was the first word she had spoken since leaving the chapel. Cordelia's expression softened with practiced sorrow. "My darling, you do not understand. I understand that Papa is dead." Several mourners looked away. Lucy continued, her voice shaking. "And I understand that Harriet is coming with me." Cordelia's patience disappeared. She has encouraged this unhealthy dependence. Harriet felt anger rise, but she did not allow it to control her reply. "Lucy has buried her father this morning. Her wish to remain with the person who has cared for her is neither unhealthy nor surprising. You are a nurse, not a lady of suitable position. I did not require a title to sit beside her through fever." Cordelia turned to the officers. "Do your duty." Matthew moved between them. "As joint guardian named in the will, I forbid the child's removal for 24 hours. Mr. Pike adjusted the papers in his hand. "The tribunal may consider such interference unfavorably. Then record that I interfered." Cordelia's eyes narrowed. "You abandoned your brother. Now you intend to seize his daughter to repair your conscience." Matthew's face did not change. Harriet saw the accusation land, nevertheless. He looked towards the waiting carriage. "Lucy will come to Redford House. Mrs. Dane may accompany her." "I shall not accompany her as your guest," Harriet said. His gaze shifted to her. "Then we should discuss the alternative." Redford House stood 3 miles from the chapel, surrounded by bare winter gardens and high stone walls. Lucy refused to release Harriet's hand during the journey. Matthew traveled opposite them without attempting conversation. When they arrived, servants waited beneath the entrance portico. A housekeeper stepped forwards to welcome Lucy formally. The child recoiled. "I want my room at home." "We shall bring your furniture," Matthew said. Lucy looked at him, suspiciously. "All of it?" "All that you wish." "My blue chair?" "Yes." "My bird drawings?" "Yes." "My father's medical books?" Matthew hesitated. Harriet expected him to object to placing grim medical volumes in a child's bedroom. Instead, he said, "Choose the ones that matter most." Lucy's grip loosened slightly. The housekeeper showed her upstairs with Harriet beside her. The bedroom had been prepared in gold and cream, with a canopy bed and porcelain dolls arranged upon a shelf. Lucy stood in the center of it. "This is not mine." "No," Harriet said. "Not yet. I do not want it." "Then we shall change it." Lucy looked towards the door. "Will they make you leave?" Harriet knelt before her. "Not tonight. That is not what I asked." Harriet could not promise what the tribunal might decide. "I shall do everything lawful to remain with you." Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "Papa said you were my mother." Harriet held her. The title had never mattered when Elias was alive. Their household had not required legal proof for every kindness. Now, a single missing blood connection threatened to erase 6 years. When Lucy finally slept, Harriet found Matthew waiting in the library. A document lay upon the desk. "You have already drafted the marriage agreement," she said. "I instructed my solicitor during the carriage journey. You appear efficient in moments of grief." "I find efficiency preferable to helplessness." Harriet remained standing. "Let us be clear. I will not become your dependent merely to appear respectable before a tribunal. I am not asking for obedience. A marriage contract written before consulting the bride suggests otherwise." Matthew pushed the document towards her. "Alter whatever you consider unacceptable." Harriet read the first page. The marriage would last 6 months, or until the guardianship ruling became final. They would maintain separate rooms. Matthew would provide a household allowance. She set the pages down. "No allowance. You will live in my house. I have an income from the convalescent home. Your income may not support the appearance of stability the tribunal expects. Then the tribunal may examine my accounts. You would prefer financial scrutiny to accepting ordinary household money? I would prefer independence to gratitude." Matthew watched her for a moment. "Very well." She began listing conditions. Equal authority over Lucy. Separate control of personal property. No interference with Harriet's management of the convalescent home. No claim by Matthew over profits earned through her work. A clear right to leave after 6 months. No marital obligation beyond the public household arrangement, she added. His expression remained composed. "Agreed." "You answered quickly. I did not propose this marriage for access to your bed." The bluntness startled her. "Nor did I accept it for access to your title." "Then we understand one another." "Not yet." She pointed to the final clause. "This says Lucy's residence will be determined by the head of household." A standard phrase. "It makes you the final authority. I am the Viscount. And I am the woman who knows when Lucy cannot sleep, which foods make her ill, and why she fears thunder." Matthew took the pen. He crossed out the clause. "Joint authority," he said. Harriet read the alteration. "Every decision, every significant decision. And when we disagree, we continue disagreeing until neither of us is tempted to use rank or affection as a weapon." That answer earned the first measure of her respect. Not trust. Not yet. The ceremony took place in Redford's private chapel before dusk. There were no flowers, musicians, or wedding clothes. Harriet still wore her funeral dress. Lucy stood between them during the vows, holding Elias's old silver watch against her chest. When the clergyman pronounced them married, Lucy looked from Harriet to Matthew. "Does this mean no one can take me?" Matthew knelt so they were level. "It means we have made it more difficult." He did not offer a comforting lie. Lucy considered his answer, then placed her hand in his, only for a moment. But Harriet noticed. Their new household began badly. Lucy refused breakfast the following morning. She would not enter the grand schoolroom or speak to the governess Matthew had employed. At midday, Harriet discovered her asleep upon the floor outside Harriet's bedroom. Matthew arrived while Harriet was covering her with a blanket. "She has a room. She does not trust it." "Why?" "Because every room she has known has disappeared within 3 days." He looked towards the child. I shall have her familiar furniture brought from the convalescent home. Cordelia may attempt to prevent access. Then Cordelia may attempt to explain why a child's chair threatens her legal claim. By evening, the blue chair, bird drawings, and a small shelf of medical books stood inside Lucy's room. Matthew carried one of the crates himself after a footman placed it in the wrong corner. Lucy watched from the doorway. "You knew Papa's books were heavy," she said. "I remember carrying them when we were boys. You and Papa were friends?" The question stopped him. "We were brothers." "That is not the same." "No." Lucy waited. "Why did you not visit?" Matthew glanced towards Harriet. She did not rescue him. "I was angry with your father," he said. "I believed he had made foolish choices." "Was Harriet one?" "No." The certainty in his answer surprised them both. "What choices?" Lucy asked. "He used family money to establish the convalescent home. He helped sick people." "Yes." "Why was that foolish?" Matthew looked at the medical books in his arms. "At the time I thought he had risked too much. And now? Now I think I understood too little." Lucy stepped aside to let him enter. It was not forgiveness. It was permission. Harriet returned to the convalescent home 2 days after the wedding. Redford House's steward objected. A viscountess should not travel without attendants. "I managed before becoming one. Your new position requires certain standards. My patients require clean dressings." Matthew entered the hall while the argument continued. "The carriage is ready," he said. Harriet looked at him. "I did not request one." "No, Mrs. Tolland did. She said the road is difficult after the rain." The steward looked disappointed that Matthew had not forbidden the visit. Harriet accepted the carriage because the reason was practical, not ornamental. The convalescent home occupied a former coaching inn near the edge of Redford village. Elias and Harriet had converted the upper rooms into wards for injured labourers and abandoned patients. Mrs. May Tolland met Harriet at the entrance. "You have become a viscountess very quickly, I have noticed. Does he expect you to stop working?" "No." "Does he know you begin before sunrise?" "He will learn." Inside, Harriet found 3 unpaid invoices and 2 letters from donors withdrawing support. The first letter described her marriage as indecently hasty. The second claimed she had used Elias's death to secure a noble husband. Cordelia's rumors had traveled quickly. Mrs. Tolland placed another envelope on the desk. This arrived from Greaves Hall. Harriet opened it. Cordelia accused her of exploiting Lucy's grief and demanded the child be interviewed without Harriet or Matthew present. At the bottom, she warned that the convalescent home's finances would be examined during the tribunal. "She means to prove you cannot support Lucy," May said. "Then we shall make every account available. You have nothing to hide." That has never prevented people from searching. Harriet spent the day checking medicines, speaking with patients, and reviewing the books. That evening, a labourer's son arrived with a high fever. Harriet remained beside him through the night. Matthew came shortly after midnight. He found her pressing a cool cloth against the child's forehead. "You missed dinner," he said. So did he. "The household expected you." The household was not delirious. Matthew removed his coat. "What is needed? You are not trained." "No, but I can carry water." She pointed towards the pump. He returned with 2 buckets, then another. For the next hour, he followed instructions without complaint. When the boy's fever began to fall, Harriet sat beside the empty stove. Matthew handed her tea. "You funded repairs to the village wells last autumn," she said. He looked at her. "Who told you?" "The father of the child you have just helped. It was an estate expense. He said you refused to have your name placed upon the new pump. A pump works no better because a viscount's name is carved into it." Harriet took the tea. For the first time, she saw something in him beyond discipline and inherited authority. He understood useful work. Perhaps that was why Elias's choices had angered him so deeply. They had forced him to confront duties he preferred to manage from a distance. "You loved your brother," she said. Matthew looked towards the sleeping child. "I loved being right more." The admission was painfully plain. "Elias wrote to you," Harriet said. "I received nothing." He began several letters. "Why did he not send them?" "I do not know." Matthew's face closed. Harriet did not offer false comfort. "Regret does not make you Lucy's father. I know. But what you do now may make you someone she trusts." He looked at her then, not as a temporary wife. As a judge whose opinion had begun to matter, Lucy's grief grew sharper rather than gentler. One morning, she refused to dress. That afternoon, she tore a lesson book in half. At dinner, she swept a porcelain shepherdess from the mantel. It shattered against the floor. A maid gasped. Harriet entered as Matthew dismissed the servants. Lucy stood beside the fragments, shaking with anger. "I hate this house." Matthew looked at the broken figure. It was part of a matched pair. "I do not care." "So I see." Harriet expected punishment. Instead, Matthew knelt and began gathering the larger pieces. "Do not touch the sharp edges," he said. Lucy frowned. "You are not angry?" "I am angry." "Then why are you not shouting?" "Because shouting will not repair the shepherdess. I do not want it repaired. Perhaps not today." He placed the pieces inside a box. "You will help me mend it when you are ready." Lucy's face crumpled. "I cannot mend, Papa." "No. Then why does everyone keep telling me to behave?" Matthew's hand stopped. "Because adults are often frightened by grief they cannot correct." Lucy began to cry. He did not reach for her immediately. He allowed her to choose. After a moment, she stepped towards him. Matthew held her whilst Harriet stood beside them. Their temporary household changed in that room, not into a family, but into three people willing to remain present when the others were difficult. Cordelia's next attack came through the local newspaper. The report described Harriet as a calculating nurse who had married one brother, then secured another before the first was buried. Donations to the convalescent home fell again. A medical supplier refused further credit. Matthew placed the newspaper on his study desk. "I will issue proceedings for defamation." "No," Harriet said. "She has attacked your name. A public suit will give the accusation months of attention. Then I will instruct every estate business to support the home. That will make it appear dependent upon you. It is my responsibility to protect my wife. I require you to protect our agreement, not my reputation." His expression hardened. "You would allow patients to suffer to preserve independence." Harriet's anger rose. "You believe money is the only form of protection because it is the form you control. And you reject help because refusal allows you to control the moral ground." The words struck accurately enough to hurt. They stood facing each other across Elias's old account book. At last, Harriet spoke. "I will invite the county medical board to inspect the home. If they approve the accounts and standards publicly, Cordelia's claims will weaken. That may take weeks. Then lend the home money through a recorded agreement at ordinary interest. You would charge yourself interest rather than accept support from your husband. I would protect the institution from becoming a favor you may later regret." Matthew looked at her for a long moment. "Very well." The loan was written properly, witnessed and limited. He did not enjoy the arrangement. He respected it. 2 days later, Mrs. Tolland found something more troubling than a newspaper attack. A private agent had approached the owner of the convalescent home's mortgage. He offered to purchase the debt, May said. "Who?" "A company registered in Belhaven." Harriet examined the name. She had seen it before in correspondence connected to Greaves Hall. Cordelia was not merely attempting to damage the home's reputation. She intended to buy its debt, close the building, and present Harriet to the tribunal as a widow without income or residence. Matthew entered carrying a packet from the trust solicitor. "Pike has refused access to Lucy's full accounts," he said. Harriet handed him the agent's letter. He read it once, then again. Cordelia controls this company. Yes, she means to destroy your livelihood before the hearing, and make Lucy believe staying with me caused patients to lose their home. Matthew's anger became frighteningly calm. I will summon Pike tonight. No, he will surrender the accounts. You cannot threaten Lucy's solicitor into obedience. I can remind him who administers the estate, supporting his profession. And Cordelia will tell the tribunal that Lucy has moved from one coercive household to another. His jaw tightened. You would wait whilst they dismantle your work? I would proceed lawfully. Lawfully, maybe too slowly. Then help me make it faster without making it yours. They stared at one another. This was the true test of their arrangement. Not whether Matthew would protect Harriet, whether he could do so without taking control from her. At last, he placed the unopened trust packet upon the desk. I will apply formally for the records tomorrow. Harriet released a breath. And tonight, we examine every expense Pike has already disclosed. They worked until after midnight. Buried amongst tutor's fees and future household costs, Harriet found 3 payments dated during weeks when Lucy had never visited Greaves Hall. One covered repairs to a ballroom roof. Another paid for a new carriage. The third had been described as preparation of a child's private suite. Lucy had never seen the room. Matthew looked at the figures. Cordelia has been using Lucy's trust. Or Pike has allowed her to classify private expenses as Lucy's care. Either is enough to question her financial motive, not enough to prove fraud. Yet, Harriet closed the account book. From the corridor came the faint sound of a floorboard. Lucy stood outside the study in her nightdress. "Is Aunt Cordelia taking my money?" she asked. Neither adult had realized she was listening. Harriet went to her. "These are questions for the tribunal." "That means yes. It means we do not know everything." Lucy looked towards Matthew. "Will she take me if she pays it back?" Matthew did not offer certainty he could not give. The tribunal will decide what is safest. Lucy's eyes filled. "What if they never ask me?" Harriet took her hand. "Then we shall insist that they do." In the shadows beyond the stairwell, a servant quietly folded the copied account page he had taken from Matthew's desk. By morning, it would be on its way to Greaves Hall. Cordelia would know they had found the payments, and she would not wait for the tribunal to protect herself. The copied account page reached Greaves Hall before breakfast. Lady Cordelia read it in the morning room while Mr. Ambrose Pike stood beside the fire. Neither noticed the servant who delivered it retreating without waiting for payment. "They have examined the trust expenses," Pike said. Cordelia laid the paper upon the table. "You assured me those entries could not be challenged." "I said they could be explained. A ballroom roof cannot be explained as a child's expense. The room was intended for Lucy's future presentation. She is 9. Pike wiped his spectacles. "The tribunal may accept that improvements were made in anticipation of her residence. And the carriage? Suitable transport for her household. My son uses it. Then your son must cease using it." Cordelia looked towards the rain-streaked windows. Greaves Hall had been declining for years. Her husband had left debts concealed beneath respectable accounts. The eastern roof leaked. Several tenant farms produced little income, and creditors had begun refusing extensions. Lucy's guardianship allowance would not rescue the entire estate. It would delay its collapse. "I will not lose her to Harriet Dane," Cordelia said. Pike replaced his spectacles. "You may lose more than the guardianship if the accounts are examined formally." Cordelia turned. "What do you suggest? A settlement? With Matthew? With both of them? Offer to withdraw the claim in exchange for control of a limited portion of Lucy's trust." Cordelia's expression hardened. "And admit that money motivated me? Call it provision for the child's connection to her mother's family." She understood what he meant. Use affection as a respectable name for payment. Arrange the meeting, she said. Matthew received Cordelia alone at a private solicitor's office in Belhaven. Harriet had spent the morning at the convalescent home and knew nothing of the invitation. Cordelia entered without greeting him. You found the household expenses. They were not difficult to find. You intend to humiliate me before the tribunal. I intend to protect Lucy's trust. She is my sister's child. She is also Elias's, and Harriet is no relation at all. Matthew's voice remained level. She is the person Lucy calls mother. Cordelia sat opposite him. You have known the child for less than a month. I have known what grief does for considerably longer. Her gaze sharpened. You mean guilt. He did not deny it. What do you want? He asked. Cordelia placed a document upon the desk. I will withdraw my guardianship claim if Greaves Hall receives an annual payment from Lucy's trust. For what purpose? To preserve her connection with her mother's family. You mean to preserve your estate. A ruined Greaves Hall would become part of Lucy's inheritance. Lucy does not inherit it. She may, if my son dies without children. Matthew read the terms. The requested sum was large enough to support the estate, its servants, and several of Cordelia's private debts. You have already spent her money, he said. I used funds for the household she would eventually occupy. You repaired a ballroom she has never entered. She will enter it one day. That is not guardianship. It is speculation. Cordelia leaned forwards. You married a widow at her husband's funeral. Do not speak to me as though your motives are beyond question. Matthew folded the document. My motives are open to examination. Are they? She smiled without warmth. Harriet may leave you when the tribunal ends. Lucy may blame you for replacing her father. Society already believes you used the child to secure a convenient wife. Matthew said nothing. Cordelia continued. Pay the allowance. I withdraw. Harriet keeps Lucy, and you avoid public disgrace. You would sell your claim to a child. I would preserve peace. No. Cordelia's composure slipped. You have not even considered it. I considered it when I read the first sentence. You are risking Lucy's future to protect your pride. No. I am refusing to purchase a child from her aunt. Matthew rose. Cordelia followed. You will regret making me your enemy. You arrived at a funeral with officers. I believe that question was already settled. He took the proposed terms with him, not to accept them, to preserve them as evidence of Cordelia's financial motive. Harriet learned of the meeting from a newspaper. The report claimed that Viscount Redford had entered private negotiations with Lady Cordelia concerning Lucy's residence. She found Matthew in the library that evening. You met her without telling me. Yes. Why? She requested confidentiality. Harriet stared at him. Cordelia's wishes outrank our agreement? No. Then why did I learn of it from a printed rumor? Matthew opened a drawer and removed Cordelia's proposal. She offered to withdraw the custody claim in exchange for money from Lucy's trust. Harriet read the paper. Did you consider it? No. You attended the meeting to learn her terms. You could have told me. I intended to tell you when I had confirmed whether Pike drafted the document. That is not your decision to make alone. His restraint began to fail. I was trying to prevent you from being dragged into another public accusation before we possessed evidence. You were trying to manage the danger without trusting me. I was trying to protect the case. And I am part of the case only when convenient. Matthew stepped away from the desk. That is unfair. Is it? Her voice remained quiet, which made the anger clearer. You proposed this marriage because the tribunal required one household. You agreed to equal authority, yet when Cordelia offered to bargain over Lucy's future, you handled it alone. I rejected her offer. That does not restore the choice you denied me. Silence settled between them. Matthew looked at the contract lying in the locked case near the window. Equal authority. He had written the words. He had not yet learned to live by them. "You are right," he said. Harriet had prepared herself for an argument. The admission disarmed her. "I should have told you before the meeting," he continued. "I treated information as protection, because control is the form of protection I understand best. And now I understand it may also resemble the conduct we are opposing." Harriet placed Cordelia's proposal on the desk. "I do not require perfection. What do you require?" "That you do not decide when I am strong enough to know the truth." Matthew met her gaze. "Agreed." Their disagreement did not disappear. Trust did not repair itself, because the correct words had finally been spoken. But that night, when they reviewed Cordelia's proposal, they did so together. The formal application for Lucy's trust accounts succeeded 3 days later. Mr. Pike delivered 6 ledgers to Redford House under protest. "They contain private family matters," he said. "They contain Lucy's money," Harriet replied. Pike looked towards Matthew, expecting intervention. Matthew remained silent. Harriet began with the earliest entries. Most were ordinary: clothing allowances, school fees, medical costs, and investments managed after Lucy's mother died. The irregular payments began 2 years earlier. Small sums at first, then larger transfers disguised as preparation for Lucy's future residence. Harriet compared the account dates with Elias's household diary. Lucy had been at home during every claimed visit to Greaves Hall. Matthew examined a list of companies receiving the money. 3 belonged to Cordelia's estate manager. "And this one?" Harriet asked. He read the name: Belhaven Agricultural Improvements. The same company that attempted to purchase the convalescent home's mortgage. Their case was becoming clearer. Cordelia had used Lucy's trust to support Greaves Hall. She had also tried to destroy Harriet's financial stability before the tribunal, yet Pike had authorized every payment. Why would a solicitor risk his profession? Harriet asked. Matthew studied the signatures. Debt, pressure, or a private benefit. They found the answer in the final ledger. Pike had received repeated consulting fees from one of Cordelia's companies. The payments stopped each time the trust balance fell below the threshold requiring external review. He timed the withdrawals, Harriet said. Matthew nodded. He knew exactly how much could be removed without immediate investigation. A servant entered with a letter. The witness who had signed Elias's will had withdrawn his support entirely. He now claimed Elias had been confused and feverish when the document was executed. The witness's name was Samuel Greeley. Harriet recognized it. He was one of Elias's patients. Where is he now? According to this, employed at Greaves Hall. Matthew's jaw tightened. Cordelia had attacked the accounts, the convalescent home, and now the will itself. She is constructing the appearance that every part of your life depends upon Elias's poor judgment, he said. Then we shall show that his judgment was sound. They found Samuel Greeley repairing fencing on the western edge of the Greaves estate. He tried to walk away when he saw them. Matthew did not block his path. Harriet called his name. Mr. Greeley, Elias treated your hand after the mill accident. Samuel stopped. His left hand remained stiff from the injury. He did. He waived the fee. Yes. And now you say he did not understand the will he signed. Samuel looked towards the distant house. I said what I was told to say. By whom? Matthew asked. Samuel's face tightened. No one. Harriet stepped closer, though she kept her voice gentle. You owe money. His eyes moved towards her. Mr. Pike arranged to clear it, she continued. In exchange for your statement. Samuel lowered his head. My daughter's husband left. She has 3 children. Will you testify? Matthew asked. No. Pike bribed you. If I admit that, I may be charged. Harriet understood his fear. You signed the will honestly? Yes. Was Elias confused? No. He read every page twice. Then write what happened. I cannot stand before Cordelia. You need not decide today, Harriet said. Matthew looked at her as they returned to the carriage. He may be our strongest witness. He is also a frightened man with grandchildren depending upon him. If he remains silent, Cordelia may take Lucy. I know. You will not pressure him? No. Matthew's frustration showed. You protect everyone, including those who injure you. No, I protect the difference between testimony and coercion. He looked back towards Samuel. Cordelia and Pike had built their case by turning fear into obedience. Harriet would not repeat their method merely because the result might favor her. If you believe a child's safety should matter more than wealth or title, you may wish to stay with us for the rest of Harriet's story. Cordelia visited Redford House the following Sunday. She arrived with 2 ponies, a new riding habit for Lucy, and a box of expensive sweets. Lucy met her in the morning room with Harriet and Matthew present. "My darling," Cordelia said, "Greaves Hall has stables, gardens, and children from the finest families nearby." Lucy looked at the riding habit. "It is pretty. It was made for you. May Harriet come to Greaves Hall?" Cordelia's smile remained in place. "She may visit once you are settled." "May she live there?" "That would not be suitable." "Why?" "Because she is not part of your mother's family." Lucy looked towards Harriet. "Then I do not want the pony." Cordelia's expression changed. "You are too young to understand what is best. Everyone says that when they do not like my answer." Matthew turned his face away, hiding the faintest trace of approval. Cordelia stood. "This child has been instructed." "No," Harriet said. "She has been heard. You will repeat this conversation at the tribunal." "We will not." Matthew looked at Harriet in surprise. Cordelia did as well. "Lucy's grief is not evidence for public performance," Harriet continued. "The judge may speak with her privately if appropriate. We shall not ask her to choose between adults in a crowded room." Cordelia stared at her. "You would surrender your strongest advantage?" "Lucy is not an advantage." For the first time, Cordelia had no immediate reply. She left the gifts behind. Lucy asked that the sweets be sent to the convalescent home. The ponies returned to Greaves Hall. That evening, Lucy entered the library carrying a wooden box. "I found these in Papa's desk," she said. Inside were several unposted letters addressed to Matthew. He opened the first. Elias had written after the brothers' final quarrel. "You believe I rejected the family when I chose the home. I believed you rejected me when you refused to understand it. Perhaps we are both proud enough to mistake distance for principle." Another letter described Lucy's first day at school. A third mentioned Harriet. "She never asks me to defend her work. She simply continues until the work defends itself." The final letter had been written weeks before Elias died. "Pride has already taken one brother from me. I will not let it decide Lucy's future. If anything happens, trust Harriet before you trust your regret." Matthew lowered the page. Lucy watched him. "Why did Papa not send them?" "I do not know. He kept saying he would." Matthew looked at the letters in his hands. "I should have written first." "Why did you not?" "Because I thought being hurt gave me permission to remain silent." Lucy considered that. "Did it?" "No." She climbed onto the chair opposite him. "Are you staying after 6 months?" Matthew's attention moved towards the doorway. Harriet stood there. The contract had never been hidden from Lucy, though its meaning had been explained carefully. "That will depend upon Harriet," Matthew said. "And you? It will depend upon me as well." Lucy frowned. "That is not an answer." Harriet entered. "Some answers require time." Lucy looked between them. "Adults say that when they are afraid." Neither could argue. The guardianship tribunal opened in Belhaven's Civic Hall 6 weeks after the funeral. The hearing was private by law, but the corridor outside filled with reporters and curious members of society. Cordelia arrived in deep blue silk, accompanied by Pike and 3 witnesses. Harriet wore a plain grey dress. Matthew offered his arm before they entered. She looked at it. "Is this for appearance?" "No." She accepted. The judge began with the marriage. "Lady Redford, Did you marry the Viscount because you loved him? No. A whisper travelled through the observers permitted inside. Harriet continued, before anyone could turn honesty into scandal. I married him because Lady Cordelia attempted to remove Lucy before the tribunal could examine Elias Dane's will. Our separate households created uncertainty. We formed one to protect the child's immediate stability. Cordelia's barrister stood. Then the marriage was fraudulent. It was lawful, limited by written conditions and understood by both parties. You intended to end it after 6 months? I reserved the right to do so. And you expect this tribunal to regard such a household as stable? I expect the tribunal to judge how Lucy has been cared for, not whether her guardians began with a romantic story. The judge looked towards Matthew. Did you propose the arrangement? Yes. Why? Because I had already failed my brother once. I would not allow delay or pride to expose his child to further loss. Cordelia's barrister raised the brothers' estrangement. Matthew did not minimize it. I refused to support Elias's convalescent home because I believed he was wasting family money. I was wrong. You abandoned him for 7 years. Yes, you now wish to be considered suitable to raise his daughter. I wish my present conduct to be examined without erasing my past conduct. There was no dramatic excuse, only responsibility. Harriet saw the judge note the answer. The convalescent home's accounts were presented next. The county medical board confirmed that it was clean, responsibly managed, and financially viable. The temporary loan from Matthew had been properly recorded and was already being repaid. Mrs. Toland testified that Cordelia's company had attempted to purchase the mortgage shortly before the hearing. Pike objected. Then Matthew presented the company records. Cordelia's estate manager controlled the buyer. The tribunal turned to Lucy's trust. Harriet explained each irregular payment. Ballroom repairs, the carriage, false preparation expenses, consulting fees paid to Pike. Cordelia's composure weakened. My intention was to prepare Greaves Hall for Lucy. You repaired the ballroom 2 years before filing for guardianship, Harriet said. The estate required improvement. With Lucy's money? She would have benefited eventually. The judge looked towards Pike. Did you approve these expenses? He hesitated. Yes. Why were your private consulting fees paid by a company receiving trust funds? Pike's face became pale. Cordelia spoke quickly. Mr. Pike advised the estate separately. Then why were the payments timed to avoid external trust review? Matthew asked. Pike looked at Cordelia. She looked away. The bank representative presented the transfer dates. The pattern was undeniable. Pike's resistance collapsed. Lady Cordelia said the money would be repaid after the southern lands were sold, he said. Cordelia rose. You authorized every payment. At your direction. You are attempting to save yourself. Yes, Pike replied, his voice shaking. Because you promised the guardianship allowance would conceal the deficit. The room fell silent. The financial motive was no longer an inference. It had been stated openly. Then the rear door opened. Samuel Greeley entered alone. I wish to correct my statement, he said. He admitted that Elias had been lucid when he signed the will. Pike had offered to clear Samuel's debts if he withdrew his support. Why come now? The judge asked. Samuel looked towards Harriet. Because she could have threatened me with prosecution. She did not. His testimony restored the disputed witness statement. Yet the judge still requested a private conversation with Lucy. Neither Harriet nor Matthew entered the room. Cordelia was excluded as well. They waited in separate corridors for nearly an hour. When Lucy emerged, she looked tired but calm. Harriet did not ask what she had said. She merely held out her hand. Lucy took it. The tribunal confirmed Harriet and Matthew as Lucy's permanent joint guardians. Cordelia was removed from all authority over the trust. Pike's conduct was referred for professional and criminal investigation. Cordelia was ordered to repay the misused funds through the sale of part of her estate. The judge permitted supervised contact with Lucy, provided Lucy wished it. Outside the hall, Cordelia confronted Harriet. "You have taken my sister's child." "No." Harriet's answer was quiet. "Lucy has not been awarded to me like property. She has been allowed to remain in the home she chose." Cordelia's face tightened. "You will turn her against me." "I will not. After everything. Because Lucy may one day wish to know you without being asked to carry your failures." Cordelia's anger gave way to exhaustion. "I did love her." "I believe you. You think that excuses me." "No." Harriet stepped closer. "Love does not become harmless merely because it is sincere." Cordelia left without replying. Months later, she sold the ballroom wing at Greaves Hall and repaid most of the trust money. Her first supervised visit with Lucy lasted 20 minutes. The second lasted an hour. Reconciliation was neither immediate nor guaranteed. It belonged to Lucy's choice. As the 6-month contract approached its final day, Matthew asked Harriet to meet him in the library. On the desk lay a new set of legal papers. She read them carefully. They granted her permanent joint guardianship of Lucy, regardless of whether the marriage continued. Her financial property remained entirely separate. The convalescent home could not be claimed by the Redford estate. Matthew had also signed a formal release allowing her to leave without opposition, penalty, or loss of residence, whilst she arranged another home. "You have removed every practical reason I might remain," she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I do not want necessity to answer for you." Harriet looked at him. He appeared more uneasy than he had before the tribunal. "You could have waited until I decided. Then you might wonder whether my influence over Lucy or the house affected your choice. And what choice do you want me to make?" Matthew's voice lowered. "I want you to stay." No title, property, or legal argument followed. "I want Lucy to continue calling this home. I want your account books on my desk and your medical bags in the hall. I want to disagree with you and be required to become better at it." Harriet's expression softened. "You have become unexpectedly specific." "I have had 6 months to prepare. And if I leave, I shall honor every document." She picked up the unsigned separation papers. For weeks, she had believed that freedom would feel like an open door. Instead, it felt like standing before a man who had opened it himself and refused to block the way. Harriet tore the separation form once, then again. Matthew stared at her. "Our marriage began as protection for Lucy," she said. "I will not pretend it began with love. No. It became trust slowly. Yes. And inconveniently, frequently." She placed the torn pages beside him. "I am staying because I choose the household we have made." His relief appeared not in a grand declaration, but in the way his shoulders finally lowered. "What happens to the 6-month agreement?" he asked. "We replace it." "With what?" "Something less temporary." He offered his hand. Harriet took it. 1 year after Elias's death, Lucy planted a young beech tree beside the convalescent home. 2 chairs had been placed beneath it, one for Harriet, one for Matthew. Lucy sat upon the grass with her father's favorite book open across her knees. She read aloud until she reached a passage Elias had marked in the margin. Matthew listened without correcting her pronunciation. Harriet leaned against his shoulder. There was no ballroom, public announcement, or celebration of rank. Patients rested beside the open windows. Nurses crossed the garden carrying clean linen. The repaired porcelain shepherdess stood inside Lucy's room, its broken line still visible beneath the glaze. Their family had not been created by blood alone, nor had marriage made it real in a single afternoon. It had been built through grief, disagreement, lawful choices, and the repeated decision to remain. When Lucy closed the book, she looked towards them. "Are we going home?" Harriet stood and held out one hand. Matthew offered the other. "Yes," Harriet said. Together, they walked back towards Redford House. Thank you for sharing this journey with us. Subscribe if you would like another original tale of love, family, and courage from the world of British period romance.